Well, thank you so much, Eva, for that wonderful introduction. I want to say to our honored elders who are here, to our wonderful grand entry participants, to our welcoming and organizing committee, and to all of our wonderfully welcome delegates here today. I bid you Oki from the Blackfoot people of Treaty 7 in Alberta. My name in Blackfoot is Kagadusina. Kagadutsi means star. And Nina he is chief. And this name was given to me in ceremony. Now, as we gather here this week in these historic lands, in the traditional territories of the Anishinaabe people, in the lands of Treaty 1 of Canada, I want us all to realize that we are all treaty people. So we are here in ceremony. Ceremony starts with a grand entry like that. Spectacular, wonderful, it just invigorates me. So we find that we are in the company of incredible people doing amazing things. Amazing energy carrying out exceptional service. We recognize the significant efforts of many great practitioners of community service that have come before this conference, have inspired us, and have left us in this wonderful state where we can carry the torch forward. For the next 3 days in ceremony that bring us together for a common purpose, through a meeting of minds and hearts, learning, reflecting, and acting together. I draw attention to the concept of ceremony here because it is so central to all of what we do as humans, to all of human societies throughout time and around the world. Ceremony is central. Ceremonies are a time when we gather to mark milestones. To remember what has come before, to bestow honors and recognize achievements. And so ceremony, in a real sense, is what defines us as a society. What do we recognize in society? What are we ceremonial about? And ceremonies can be simple and they can be complex. They can be huge and they can be small. So I'm going to draw an analogy instead to a telescope, and this shouldn't be a surprise. That is the way I see the world. So each of us has this innate ability to reflect. And perhaps this is what separates us from the animals. We have this ability to reflect, self-reflection, reflecting on what is around us in our life, and we shine this back out into our lives. And so as we gather here together as a collective, it's like building a much larger reflective surface. And being here at this conference is like peering into a telescope that can focus our attention on some of the greatest and most wonderful things that our society is doing. So I want to express what an honor it is to be asked here to make some remarks and to introduce our keynote address this morning. When our chairperson, Eva Friesen, first approached me to see if I would consider making some remarks, I was shocked, honestly. I mean, Eva, to me, she's so up there, you know? Chairing the Calgary Foundation. And being a member, I saw her for my first year at the Rotary Club of Calgary. She was always up there each week. With such poise and dignity, and I really, really look up to her. So I was honestly shocked. But I knew that this was a great opportunity, and so I jumped at it, to be here, to be part of this. You see, I'm a complete neophyte at community service and philanthropy. I mean, it's so far beyond what I normally do, what I do for a living, and what I'm trained to do. And you'll come to see why it is that I've jumped into that. Now, when people hear that I'm an astronomer, that I have a degree in astrophysics, that I have comets and asteroids named after me, when they hear that I work on a space mission on a Canadian satellite that's designed to find objects that we may one day visit and even capture, and that we may even mine for resources in the future. These things people find amazing. When they hear this, they are amazed. But for me, that is not the amazing thing. Not at all. Because when they further hear that I'm a high school dropout, I did not complete high school. When they hear that I went through a time in my youth where I nearly died on the street from substance abuse and depression. When they hear that I'm an Aboriginal Canadian raised by a single parent. When they hear that I went through an incredible struggle. I was a broken man with no dignity, no self-respect. I literally had nothing left to lose. Then they wonder how. And the answer to that how is exactly why we're here today. The how is smart and caring communities. When I was dying from depression, there were people that could see a way out and guide me. When I was homeless and destitute, there were shelters and services that keep me alive. When I was lost in the haze of drug and alcohol abuse, there were treatment centers and meetings that I could go to help me to realize how to live beyond my dependence. And when finally, after several years, I had risen to a point where I could contemplate my education, there were funds and there were people to guide me into the schools and into the programs that led me to where I am now. And that was a vast social network, a social safety net that saved me and gave me a glimmer of hope. And ultimately led me to being able to speak with you today. A vast network of smart and caring people. Now, when I was 17, I was admitted to the psychiatric ward of the University of Alberta Hospital in Edmonton, under the care of Dr. Blackman, and I spent 2 or 3 months there. And they tried all kinds of drug therapy on me, but the pain and the depression that I was suffering from were deeper than their drugs could reach. And I could have told them that before I got there, because I had tried many drugs previously. But honestly, I know what was happening to me. That it was actually the ravages, it had a name. It was the ravages of intergenerational trauma that had reached out to me through generations of despair in the Aboriginal communities. This led to a 5-year precipitous drop in my life where I literally ended on the street. And it could have taken my life several times. But there was that social safety net that caught me. And this was instead followed by a 5-year-long climb out of the hole that I found myself in. The climb was primarily fueled by 3 things that I learned, that I was shown and taught. And those 3 things were gratitude, forgiveness, and compassion. Now, it's pretty hard to think that a man on the street with no dignity or respect would have gratitude or compassion. But it was the learning of the ability to forgive myself that led me forward. So, I'm in extra innings. It's all a gift. The renewed life that I've been given is a gift. And the gifts that have been given to me are symbolized by several objects that I brought here today, and I just want to point out a few of them here. This blanket was given to me on the occasion of the completion of a 30-day treatment program at Palmakers Lodge near Edmonton for alcohol and substance abuse. And this drum and this eagle feather were given to me on the occasion of my first pipe ceremony, my first real introduction to my heritage at the age of 15. These moccasins belonged to my grandfather, and they are covered in the ochre paint that was on my face the day I was given the name, Kagatusina. And the most amazing thing on this table is this rattle. The ceremonial rattle was given to the woman who gave me this blanket 30 years prior. And it was given to me on a day that was the most incredible day of my life. On a day in 2011, when I was at my reserves, Siksika Nation, and I was giving a talk, very similar to this one. And I blessed this rattle. I smudged it with sweetgrass. And I gave my talk. And this was given to me by the woman who gave me this blanket. And it had been given to me by the man who performed the pipe ceremony where I was given this eagle feather. And the threads that I could see weaving through the whole ceremony that day was amazing. It was the same day I was given this vest that I wear. This vest was given to me as a symbolic welcoming back into my people, into my nation. And the man who gave Maggie this rattle before she gave it to me was a man who had taught as a Jesuit priest in the very school I was speaking at that day. And in the audience that day was a woman who heard my story and put it together with what she knew from her family. And she came up to me and she said, "I think I know who your birth mother is." So it was a most incredible day. On the door of that residential school, which is now Old Sun Community College, there's a plaque from the day it opened in September 1971. That was the same month that I was adopted. And I was taken from my culture and from my people. And to be back there 40 years later, it was the most incredible feeling. It gives me shivers even now. So I go now and I give these talks. And when I speak about reconciliation, people think of it in the Aboriginal sense. Most people think of it on a societal scale, as trying to overcome generations of anger, resentment, and entrenched positions. But this is not what I mean when I talk about reconciliation. Of course, there is that aspect to it, and we hope to be there one day if we can forgive. But we need, all of us, every single person needs to come to a reconciliation with themselves. They need to realize who they are, where they're from, what they've done, and take ownership and responsibility, and ultimately pride. And that comes from forgiveness and compassion. So it is this ability to forgive myself which led me to take ownership of my problems, to forgive some of the most heinous failures in my life, and led me to a much more hopeful journey. So this is a gift. And this is the message that I carry when I speak to Aboriginal youth. And I speak to them at detention centers, And I speak to them at life skills training courses, like the one that I took before I could go back to school. And I speak to them in colleges and universities. And I want to leave them with this message that no matter the state of societal reconciliation, they can have a reconciliation in themselves, which can lead to a much happier and fulfilling life. So we can forget about the huge societal problems, concentrating on ourselves, and this is where a fountain spring of compassion can come from. And I know I'm speaking to the choir here. You all realize this, of course. So with that, I would like to introduce our keynote this morning to be delivered via video. We're going to hear from Sean Atleo, who is the National Chief of the Assembly First Nations. Sean Atleo was born in 1967 in Ahousaht, British Columbia. He's a First Nations activist, formerly served as AFN's regional chief in British Columbia. He has been a hereditary chief of the Ahousaht Nation since 1999, and he is part of the Nchano people. He holds a Master of Education in Adult Learning and Global Change from the University of Technology in Sydney, Australia. He was elected as the Assembly of First Nations National Chief in July 2009. He was given a second mandate in July of 2012 last year. In 2008, he was named Chancellor of Vancouver Island University in Nanaimo, British Columbia, becoming the first University Chancellor of Aboriginal heritage in the province's history. He's been the Executive Director of a Family Addictions Treatment Center, of an Aboriginal Post-Secondary Training Institute, and he was a participant in the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples. He led a delegation after the terrible earthquake and tsunami to help Indigenous peoples in Indonesia to rebuild. Sean Atleo and his partner of 26 years, Nancy, have 2 children, Tyson and Tara. He has been given numerous awards and honorary degrees. Just this year, he has the Inspire Award for Education, formerly known as the Aboriginal Achievement Awards. He has been given the Queen Elizabeth II Diamond Jubilee Medal, and this was presented to him by Governor General David Johnson last year. Numerous honorary degrees from prestigious schools such as Ryerson, Queen's, Bishops, the BC Institute of Technology, and the Pissing University. I had the opportunity to meet Sean last November in Ottawa at this incredible symposium called the Youth Entrepreneurship Symposium. And he spoke at the Gala Awards dinner. And we were in the Great Hall of First Peoples in the Museum of Civilization in Ottawa. And it was just an amazing time. And he was standing on the stage that was surrounded by incredible totem poles, incredible beauty and works of art, and he pointed out to the gathered that museums like that and rooms like that were built and constructed principally to hold what were thought to be the last vestiges of a dying civilization. And it became very clear, the message, that we are still here, and we are learning to thrive, and we are learning to take our place in dignity again. Because as my mom said, when Dr. Blackman told her, "I don't think he's going to make it, Louise," she said to him, she said, "Well, he's still breathing, isn't he?" Where there's breath, there is hope. So ladies and gentlemen, please listen now to these video remarks from our National Chief of the Assembly of First Nations, Sean Atleo.